Thank you for joining us. This is another episode of the podcast Marketing, Management, and Money. I am your host, Ryan Owens.
And I'm your host, Ryan Murray.
Thank you for joining us today. We have a special guest on the show. This is the governor of the state of Utah, and I would like to inform everybody of our imminent situation. We need everybody to stay indoors. Go down in your root cellar. Take your 47 years worth of food and water. And we need to ride this puppy out. Yeah, so if you guys didn't know, there is...
What was that?
I don't know. There's a life-threatening situation occurring currently. And
there is.
Yeah, and it's drastically affecting Utah's toilet paper supply.
You know, I wish you were joking right now.
Yeah.
But 100% today in the great state of Utah, United States, it is difficult to go find toilet paper.
And you know that any Utahn listening to this right now is like, oh, crap, that's the governor. We got to go. Molly!
The governor sounds nothing like that.
I know, right? Get to the basement!
But yeah, so what in the world led us to have a toilet paper shortage, and why is the rest of the nation laughing at us?
I know, right? So as I'm sure everybody under the sun knows, that there's a little tiny bug crawling around called the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, and I have talked to an incredible amount of people about this, like asking this question, and I have yet to understand this. But for whatever reason, under everything that we can, for as far as we could see, the Mormons have banded together and said, we're going to get sick. Let's buy the toilet paper.
Right.
I don't get it. Why? Why do my fellow Utahns think that it's relevant?
I was
related. Like what?
I was talking to a friend of mine from California, and she's like, what are you guys doing with it? Like wrapping your head in toilet paper to keep yourself safe? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen anyone walking around looking like a mummy, but 100%. You can't buy toilet paper.
All right. So
how do we turn this into something that our small businesses care about other than laughing at Utah?
Yeah, I was going to say we can make jokes about Utahns for a long time.
Right. But so here's the thing, and this is what matters. How in the world, as a small business, how do you predict that people are going to buy all the toilet? I mean, I'm talking Costco was out, Walmart was out. Like you could not find toilet paper.
Local grocery stores, corner drugstores, gonzo.
Yeah. Statewide.
Empty.
Right. And so as a small business, how do you predict these kinds of things? And how do you fortify yourself against them? Because I'll tell you, when catastrophes happen, and they happen, when catastrophes happen, there's two things that happen with the businesses that are involved. They either go under or they make a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
And since we're not in favor of businesses going under, now we don't like profiteering. I don't think that's the correct answer.
Yeah,
taking
we're
advantage
not
of people. No. At least I'm not.
He's not a pirate.
Arr. Be ye warned.
I know. There's somebody out there that's just listening for the first time. He's like, oh my gosh, this dude has an eye patch.
Yeah. But, you do not want to profiteer. That's just, it's morally wrong. I don't care who you are. Don't be that guy. Don't be that business.
Yeah. So really quick, for those out there who might not understand the term, define profiteering really quick.
Okay. So
because I think that's relevant to this type of a scenario that we're going to be talking about.
It is relevant. And so when I'm saying profiteering, or we're talking about pirating, basically the idea is if someone is in dire need and you start gouging them just because you can.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between supply and demand, and when there's short supply, you want to, increase your price. That's not profiteering. That's saying, hey, you know what? I planned appropriately. I happen to have all the supply. Therefore, I'm going to sell it at a premium.
Yeah.
A premium is different than profiteering. Profiteering is where you are gouging. You're taking advantage of the situation. You're hurting people by how much you're trying to profit from, them having to buy this item from you.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key of it right there is if you are inflicting suffering on people just because you have something that they need and they can't get it otherwise, and you're unrelenting in your, drive for a profit, that you're like, hey, I don't care if you need this or you're suffering or whatever. In fact, I hope you have more so that I can charge more. Like,
yeah,
that's the difference. It's
and here's the flip side of that is, so businesses, anytime there is a disaster, anytime there is a major catastrophe, businesses play a key role in recovering from that disaster.
Right.
They're the ones that are manufacturing the goods that need to be shipped into these places. They're producing all of the things that, the medical supplies, the food, the transportation. Yeah. This is all done through businesses. And so, having businesses at the forefront of disasters is a great way to recover as quickly as possible from the disaster.
Right.
And so, a business in that situation can do a lot of good. They can also do a lot of bad. And so we're only going to address businesses doing a lot of good, staying on the moral side of the compass and making sure that, you're the one helping. But
yeah.
How do you predict that? How do you be the one helping? And also, how do you guard yourself? What are some of the precautions that businesses need to take so that they're able to weather these storms better?
Yeah, I think one of the key things that I see small businesses I feel like small businesses think that they are just forced to, by nature of being a small business, they're forced to ride this razor thin edge of being financially, I'm not even going to say healthy, like financially existent.
Stable?
I wouldn't even call it stable. I feel like there are way too many small businesses out there that are just like, well, this is the way it is. No, it's not. You can manage your finances and your business in such a way that you have healthy growth. You have healthy financial books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's so interesting is, I'll tell you, if you don't have a healthy balance sheet, and that's where you're going to see it, is you're going to see it on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
If you do not have a healthy balance sheet, then when disaster strikes, you're going to struggle more than someone who has a healthy balance sheet. And if you don't know what we mean by healthy balance sheet, tune in to episode 10, where we talked about cleaning up bad financials off of the balance sheet. It's a wonderful episode, covers all of that. But it's the balance sheet that is the tool to measure how healthy and successful you are.
Right. So I think for me, I think that would be my first point of advice is to make sure that you are financially healthy and on a sure footing. That doesn't mean that you have to be completely debt-free or operating only on cash and,
right.
These idealistic things that I think people place too much value on, place too much weight on, right?
Yeah, but you're not over-leveraged.
Right, exactly.
You know your supply chain. You understand the risks that are affecting your supply chain.
Yeah, you're making conscious decisions about the risk that you're taking.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that you have to be completely free of risk. In fact, a lot of times risk is healthy for growth. It's required for healthy growth.
Yes. But I want to just touch on this, that if you're going to take risk in one area, limit how many areas you're going to extend yourself at a time. So if you have yourself in a risky situation for growth, great. But don't put yourself in 3 risky situations all at the same time. That's
right.
Too much. Manage one risky situation at a time, especially if they're high risk. If they're medium risk, 1 or 2, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if it's a high risk situation, tackle one at a time. You don't have to be in 4 high-risk situations all at once, being like, we're going to grow. That's, too much.
We're going to diversify our product line, and we're going to grow all of our profits.
And we're going to triple the size of our workforce.
Yeah.
And we're going to launch 3 new warehouses across the United States. And, I mean...
We're bringing all of our supply stateside.
Yeah, I mean, and we're being a little bit facetious and exaggerating here. That's on purpose, but those kinds of things really happen. It's tempting to look at it and be like, oh, hey, I could do this and I could do this. And
I'm going ultra green.
Yeah. It's like...
baby steps, man. We'll get there.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Right.
The hope for the future is not lost. Anyway, so so that's my first point. My second point would be if you're a company that provides actual goods, I think it's and this might be counterintuitive, but I think a solid piece of advice for small businesses that carry actual products is to manage your inventory. And that kind of comes back to...
how is managing your inventory counterintuitive?
Well, okay, so this is the piece that I think is a little bit counterintuitive, and I've seen this happen.
Okay, clarify then.
Some people are probably listening being like, well, duh, but I have seen so many companies when they hear about a disaster coming or some imminent threat to the economy or their business in specific or whatever, they all of a sudden will buy up as much inventory as possible to prepare for that. And that's not smart all the time. I mean, there is the occasional situation that comes along where that is appropriate, but from what I've seen, that is more circumstantial or chance based than actually something that you can like plan on and be like, well, no, because of X, Y, and Z, we need this. Like, you don't know when Hurricane Katrina is going to freaking rip through the Gulf. And then all of a sudden, so this is an experience that I was able to be privy to. I wasn't part of, but I was able to observe when there was a disaster in the southern states. And there was a particular nationwide company that they didn't have all of the supply to contribute to the rescue efforts and other things that were going on, the rebuilding efforts and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah.
But they were a nationwide company, and they literally took their employees and sent them from like Michigan and Wisconsin and Wyoming, and they sent them down to the southern states to volunteer. Now, this is a nationwide company. This isn't a startup small business, but
they did what they could.
Right.
They took the resources they had available to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though they saw some of these storms of things coming, they weren't like, whoa, we're going to make a huge profit. Mm-hmm. They continued to manage their inventory as they saw fit. And then when those things happened, they did what they could.
So I love the examples you're giving, but I want to, and maybe this is just how my mind operates, but I want to clarify something. You know, when you talk about manage your inventory and you said, oh, don't go buy up a whole bunch, you know, in time. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying, but you can take that one of two ways. And what I would like to clarify is to say, don't gamble your inventory. If you know something is coming and you're like, okay, I want to have a little bit extra on hand, that's still managing the inventory.
Oh, sure.
But if you're sitting there and you're just like, all right, it's coming, I know what's happening, and so, you know, I'm gonna go and buy all this stuff that unless this catastrophe happens, I can't sell it. Right. You know, that to me is gambling, where you're just throwing it out there. And so, like I said, maybe that's how I look at things.
No, I think that's a valid point. That's a great clarification, because I'm not being clear in I guess what I'm trying to say. I think you're absolutely right. What kind of more of what I was saying is not even the gambling side of it, but almost like the fear side of it. Like, oh my gosh, we're doomed. Like, Molly, get to the shelter. kind of an attitude. Like, so, we need to buy up all of this widget so that when it happens, we can, we don't have to worry about our supply.
Okay. And
that's my bad.
I so want to get to that, but
sure.
let me just give an example here before we move on to the paranoia stage, right?
Yeah.
Let me give an example of I was actually talking with a warehouse out of Florida, and they so this whole coronavirus is going on right now. Everyone's getting all worked up in a frenzy over it.
Yeah.
Just a couple weeks back, so one of the things that they warehouse is face masks.
Yeah.
Those little, HEPA filter face masks things that
Yeah, the allergen, the dust and contaminant filter, whatever.
Right, yeah. And so they were sitting on these, and they had noticed a slump in sales.
Okay.
And the business owner, he's looking at this and he's like, what do I do? He's like, maybe I need to discount these things and
liquidate,
run a spring special, because I used to be able to clear out a couple boxes a month, and now I haven't moved anything for a couple months, and then boom, all of a sudden coronavirus hits. He's got customers who haven't talked to him in years calling him up and wanting to get face masks because they know that they carry. And one of the things that I thought was really cool that he did is he's like, we had a pallet worth, and people were telling me, they're like, I'll buy 25 boxes right now. And what he did is he went to his loyal customers and he reached out to them and he said, hey, would you like to buy? And he used
it as a relationship building
tool.
tool.
He was smart in what he did. He's like, you know what? You've been good to me over the years. I'm now going to be good to you. And that goes back to kind of that non-profiteering where he was looking out for people that were looking out for him and building that relationship and keeping a cool head. Like he didn't, as soon as someone wanted to buy, he could have just been like, okay, here it is. He could have doubled the price and sold to the first bidder, and he would have cleared that pallet out in no time. I mean, he did clear that pallet out very quickly.
Yeah.
But
it wasn't like, hey, everybody, we're having a Saturday auction.
Yeah. And so, when you talk about managing inventory, I'm like, hey, what a smart thing for him. He thought he was going to have to, kind of liquidate this stuff. A fluke happens. He could have never predicted. And now he's in the position where he's got the power card, but he didn't leverage it. He just worked with his customers, got it out there. He's like, I sold my pallet. It took me a day, and that pallet was gone.
Yeah. And that's what I mean with when I said earlier about how you can't really plan for situations like this in a lot of ways. It's much more circumstantial when you just happen to have the right inventory for the right situation in the right disaster in the right area. Like it's
right.
It's just chance. I mean, it's really, I don't know, maybe there's some magician out there, some analyst that's like, I can predict it, but
I'm pretty sure there's more people who have failed at predicting the end of the world than ever gotten it right.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. It's in terms of small businesses, in terms of my experience, it's not something that happens. And so I wouldn't try to game the system. Like you're saying, playing at the roulette table in terms of inventory, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not like you have a 10% chance of return. You don't have that.
Right.
Anyway, so back to the paranoia.
Oh, okay. So, this in my mind is like the big one, and this is probably where we're going to wrap up this whole discussion, but let's talk the paranoia bug.
Yeah. I think it's I've seen the paranoia bug just completely flatten companies that were otherwise healthy.
Yeah.
Like it is insane.
Right.
There was a customer or a client that I worked with, not a customer, a client that I worked with that he took too much risk on ultimately what happened is he took too much risk on because of his paranoia and saying like, oh, this side of my business, this is happening. And like his industry, I guess I should give some notes here, some details.
Okay.
It's all clear in my head. Why can't you guys just understand
we're totally on board.
Okay. Let me back up. Slow down. All right. So this client that I worked with, he came to me talking to me about a situation in his industry where his industry had made a pretty solid shift. And it wasn't in his favor, unfortunately. And so we were discussing his options, ways that he could leverage his situation or pivot, make the best out of it, really just avoid having to do massive layoffs and wash his hands and start over kind of a deal.
Yeah.
So he followed up with me a few weeks after we initially met, and he had told me that he determined that it was best if he diversified his business portfolio, and he actually opened another sister company to try to compensate, so to try to take advantage of that
shift in the market.
Yeah. And it ended up just being a wave. It wasn't a consistent change, and it ended up just flattening both his company. He had the company for, I think it was about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was over 10 years. It was over a decade.
Yeah.
And yeah, completely flattened that company because he wasn't willing to try to work with the changes. And because he put all of his eggs in that other basket, in the new basket of trying to ride that wave, which didn't pan out, and not even in a year, that thing was gone.
And what this boils down to, the word here is fear.
Yeah.
If you are managing out of fear, you are always on the downward spiral.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy way to manage your business. As you were talking, I thought of another company that I had the privilege of working with, where the owner was getting quite a bit older, and he didn't have the best health. And you knew that he was thinking, okay, I'm gonna kick the bucket one of these days. And so he wanted to leave his company in good hands. But the problem was he thought everyone was just after his money.
Yeah.
And he got into this weird paranoia and he ended up getting rid of his management team and bringing in, he basically would only bring in people that were a non-threat to him in his mind, but because they were a non-threat, they were actually incompetent. And so he got rid of all of his competent management, brought in incompetent management. That way they weren't a threat to him because he was afraid.
Yeah.
And,
which just ends up being a facade.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a bad situation to get into. And so regardless of whether there is, a calamity going on, whether there is a health scare going on, whether it's just internal, you cannot manage out of fear. You've got to just, keep your cool, keep your head. Don't get all nervous and antsy and start making dumb decisions. That's what happens. It's dumb decisions.
Yeah. Well, and before we wrap up, I know we're getting there. I think I would like to have a conversation about that. Maybe we need to do another podcast episode where we talk about entrepreneurs and fear, because it's an interesting paradox that as entrepreneurs, we fight through that initial fear of becoming an entrepreneur, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to take that leap, and it's like stomach up through your throat and, flying at 90 miles an hour and your eyes are watering and you just have no clue what's going on. But, it's like you just got to give it the onion and go sometimes. And that's terrifying. And as an entrepreneur, you fight through that. But then I like you're mentioning with, I think as we mature as entrepreneurs and small business owners, we build something and we recognize that. And for us, it has so much value, so much inherent value that can't be valued in money or, in a lot of ways it's sentimental. And even if you sell your company and you're like, wow, yeah, I made a killing on that.
Mm-hmm.
There still is something, there's still a piece of you, there's still that sentimental piece that's like, that hangs on it. And so it's like our fear transforms as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a lot that we could go into there, but we're going to wrap it up for today. I think we covered some good ground. Moral of the story is, hey, you know what? As entrepreneurs, go out there, make a difference. People in the world need you. They need your goods. They need your services. You're making a difference, so keep at it. And
ration your toilet paper
and
if you're in Utah.
No, sell your toilet paper if you're in Utah.
Take your printer paper, cut it up into squares. You'll make a killing.
Oh, and with that, thanks so much for joining us. We'll catch you again next week.
Take care.